Some SMME owners are confused about the benefits of the relief offered by banks since government launched schemes to benefit SMMEs negatively affected directly or indirectly by the COVID-19 pandemic. The banking industry has extended relief, or rather a relief scheme, to some of the struggling businesses, and some banks offer online banking where SMMEs customers can register their request for assistance, and this will enable the bank to obtain information and present potentially relevant relief solutions. So let's get to hear more about this and dispel the notion of whether it's a grant, a relief fund, or whether it's going to be free for all. We have head of customer SME segment at FNB, who is Jesse. And of course, Jesse Weinberg is head of SMME Customer Segment at FNB. Thank you very much for coming through, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, there seems to be confusion about the help, whether it's a loan or a grant. So let's differentiate between a payment holiday and cash flow relief.
Sure. So really, when we talk about cash flow relief, it's any mechanism which is going to help a small business owner to prevent the situation where they don't have cash flow coming in and they're required to make payments to suppliers or to make repayments on loans. So when we talk about cash flow relief, it could be a number of things. So one of them, for example, is you could have a loan with a bank like ourselves, where that loan requires you to make monthly repayments. And so one of the mechanisms that we've offered our customers is to contact us for these 3-month period that we're in now, so for April through to June, where we can then assist in providing you with a form of a payment holiday, so that if you do want to take it up, you can essentially you won't need to then make the repayments for this period, but you will need to make up for those repayments at a later point. So essentially, we're just helping you from a cash flow point of view, because if you're not getting cash flow into your business, this will then allow you to defer those payments so that you at least are solving the situation from a temporary cash flow perspective. There are then other forms of help that have been announced and they're out there. So one of them, for example, that we are involved in, and we're a partner and the agent for the South African Future Trust, which is the SAF Trust. And that is a trust that was set up by the donations of Mickey and Jonathan Oppenheimer. The trust essentially, through using participating banks, is allowing customers to apply for a form of a loan, which is a non-interest bearing loan. And the intention of that is specifically to channel money to reach employees of small, medium businesses, to help the actual employees of those businesses to receive some sort of income if the business is not trading at the moment. So that's an example of an alternative funding source, which will also help to a certain extent. They've got different intentions. But when we talk about cash flow relief, it could be many things which are helping businesses to fight the challenge, which could be that they don't have any cash flow coming into their business at the moment.
Is this creating what one can term an expectation that is confusing, and they could be at the end of the lockdown be disappointed when they have to pay back the money? Because others have been saying, they were listening to my interview with you last week when you were saying that they understood it to be something that they don't have to pay back. What are the payback terms?
So there's different terms for different forms of help. And just before I forget, so that's also why what we've done on our FNB app as well as on our online banking is to specifically put a section there which is called the COVID-19 section, to provide all of the information, the frequently asked questions, links to even government websites, to just explain what the different forms of helps are. And I think it is important for customers to reach out to their banks and to go onto the websites and just get clarity. Most of it is published on all the banks' websites. The bulk of the support or the initiatives that are being offered by banks is in the form of helping you to defer your obligations to a later point in time. So in other words, it's not a grant, it's not to give money which doesn't need to be repaid. It's essentially recognizing that there is help that's being extended to you in this time that you would need to repay at some form in a later point. So whether we extend the term of the loan contract right now, so that we add on a term, or if, for example, you take out a further loan, let's say, at a preferential rate or even at a prime rate to help you bridge this period. But most of the offerings are loans. Even from what I understand with the government offerings, there is a mixture of where they are looking at certain grant options, but a lot of the options which are being extended from many of the funds are either interest-free loans or there are loans which have got some sort of interest attached. Mm-hmm. But yes, there is a lot of misconception. In the case of, for example, the SAFT Trust, that is not a grant. It's an interest-free loan for 5 years, and it does need to be repaid. In the case of obviously now banking loans, to offer you the option to have a break from paying the repayments for the 3-month period, but you'd still need to repay them at a later point. So it is an optional opt-in if you want to be part of it. But again, I think the most important thing is that all of the funds and all of this information is being published on not just on the actual fund's website. So in the case of, for example, SAFT have their own website set up with all of the information. As the banks, and I can also mainly speak for our banks, is that we have put this information up on our app and on our website to specifically help our customers to make sense of it. But if there is uncertainty, that customers must absolutely reach out to us, contact us, speak to a bank if you've got a bank with us, or contact our call center, or secure chat with us on our app.
Jesse, do we know how this relief is linked to government relief measures? People come to us and say, no, we've heard that the Motsepe Foundation has donated 1 billion rand, the Oppenheimers have donated 1 billion rand. How is this linked? Because people think that it was a donation and therefore they need to have access to it. Just dispel this notion and confusion that this is actually assistance relief, but not free for all.
Sure. So it's understandable why there is confusion, and the specific ones that you are mentioning are private individuals or their family offices, which the donation is coming from private individuals, which in the case, like you mentioned, if it's Motsepe or Oppenheimers, they are donating money to set up a fund, to set up a trust, or whatever the mechanism is. So it's then put into a fund, which that particular fund has got certain criteria of who will be eligible for the money and who won't. So in the case, the one I can speak confidently about is the South African Future Trust, where that was a 1 billion rand donation from the Oppenheimers, which was put into a non-profit fund. And the money is not going to make its way back to the Oppenheimers. This was a donation that's been put into a fund. And if you meet the eligibility criteria to qualify to get that money, then you'd essentially be able to put forward that application. And if you were approved, you'd be able to get access to that interest-free loan. So it's very similar, from what I understand, of many other of these private donations, where the donations are being used to set up a fund of money that if businesses that meet a certain criteria, they can then access it. But it's still on an application basis, and it's still on a criteria basis. They are relatively, many of them have nothing to do with the government on a direct basis, is that these are private, separate initiatives which have been initiated by non-government families or individuals. So it just depends on what the actual money, where the money is coming from, or who's establishing the fund. But that being said, then there's also government funds which have been specifically set up. But again, even some of the government ones, you need to understand what the criteria is for what the purposes of the fund is and who's eligible to actually qualify for it. So they're almost all almost all of them are on an application basis only, and there is criteria. So I guess there is a lot of misunderstanding out there, but the reality is that the information is clearly published on most of the ones that I'm aware of, where it's explaining very clearly as to what those sources of funds are, or who can actually apply and get those funds, and in what form they are. But again, I would obviously also encourage the customers to also reach out to their banks, and I can speak again so for ourselves, is that we put most of the information at least that we're aware of, and we keep on adding to it continuously onto our app and to our online banking to try and help people make sense of what sources of funding are out there.
All right, thank you very much for explaining this. Hopefully, viewers out there are clarified in terms of this application of relief funding and, of course, being accessed through eligibility, and it's not for profit. And, of course, when you apply for it, you're going to get it as an interest-free loan. Jesse Weinberg is head of the Customer SME Segment at FNB.